Calling to order the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee meeting. It is Wednesday, March 6th, 2024 at 3:31 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Keys, Vice Chair Browning,
Present.
Alderman Aldridge,
Present.
Chair Schweitzer,
Present.
Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Keys. 3 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. A quorum being present, we will move to the approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, February 28th, 2024.
So move.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Keys, Vice Chair Browning,
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge,
Aye.
Chair Schweitzer,
Aye.
3 ayes.
Thank you. By your vote, you have sustained the motion, and we have approved the minutes of Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. We will move on to board bills for review, and at this time, I will ask Vice Chair Browning if he can take control of our committee meeting.
Happy to do that. Alderwoman Schweitzer, you are recognized on Board Bill 217.
Thank you, Vice Chair, members of the board. During today's committee meeting, I was hoping that we could continue the conversation we've had on Board Bill 217, going a little deeper into the weeds of what this bill says in each and how it compares to the current Complete Streets policy in the city of St. Louis. Madam Clerk, can you advance the slide, please? So in the previous committee meeting, we heard from representatives from the American Heart Association to go through the Smart Growth America policy of Complete Streets and the best practices of those policies and how they score policies that are modern Complete Streets policies. They went through the 10 key points of those policies, and we learned how our bill and that we have in front of us now and the current policy City of St. Louis stacks up on those policies. We also heard from the Board of Public Service. We heard from Rich Bradley, and we also heard from Planning and Urban Design from Scott Ogilvie about the Transportation Mobility Plan that is upcoming, as well as the various roles that the various departments have to handle so much of the work that we are talking about in this bill. So to move on today, one of my favorite things that we do is in committees is really dive into the meat of the bill, the point by points of each bill, so that we can know exactly what we're talking about, not just the concepts, but exactly what changes that we're discussing making. After that, if works for the committee, there are some folks that would like to provide public testimony on this bill, and we are lucky enough to be joined here today by Streets Director Bethany Williams, who can give her perspective on the bill and on the work that her department does. And then I'd love for a time after that for a discussion from this committee about potential amendments to the bill based on additional public and departmental feedback. This is definitely a work in progress. For those watching at home, I want you to know about the upcoming opportunities to testify or participate in the community and in committee meetings, as well as what some of the behind-the-scenes work is happening regarding this bill at the Board of Aldermen and in the city departments. So on Wednesday, March 13th, Transform 314 will host Smart Growth America, and I believe Alderman Vice Chair Browning is planning on attending, and anyone else is welcome to get community feedback on the Complete Streets bill, and as well on they will be hearing from Smart Growth America on best practices of Complete Streets. So they may have additional feedback after that presentation, and I will be there to answer any questions and speak to the group as well. Then there will also, the next day, Smart Growth America is offering the chance for elected officials and city officials to participate in a workshop with them, something that they do regularly with cities, where they will go through the Smart Growth America Complete checklist, as well as do a walking workshop within those cities about how the policies would apply to the infrastructure that exists. So that's open to city employees and elected officials. And then the next committee meeting is Monday, March 25th at 10 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. That will be the next Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee in which this bill is heard. Next slide. Thank you. So we have a current Complete Streets ordinance, as you all know, and that was passed in 2015. That was an update to the ordinance that was in effect. At the time, this bill and this ordinance did take in the best practices of Complete Streets policies at the time. And around the country, there were other cities that were adopting similar Complete Streets policies. Some of these are listed here. Next slide. But like anything that happened in 2015, there have been changes to what is considered best practices. And this bill, what this bill does is tries to take the best practices that have changed and incorporate them into what the city of St. Louis has as the guiding policy for Complete Streets. So there are some things that are really important to note. The guiding principle of the policy is laid out here, and then a lot of the definitions have remained relatively unchanged as well. Next slide. So what the bill does, point by point, in section 1, it repeals the original current, not original, but the current Complete Streets policy, and institutes this new policy in section 2. And what this policy does, it expands on the current ordinance that's in place, and it includes consideration of all users of all abilities, and it requires the Complete Streets principles to be a consideration of all transportation, funding, planning, construction, reconstruction, and operation within the transportation system. Next slide. The definitions that we're talking about for additional clarification are spelling out the definition of city, ADA, and the committee, which refers to the Complete Streets Advisory Committee, which was established, or which does exist as per the current ordinance, but is further clarified in this policy. Next slide. So this section, section 4, around the Complete Streets principles, was amended from the original policy that's in place now to incorporate the current best practices. Some of these things talk about the ensuring contextual sensitivity, and that's regarding the planning process and engaging with stakeholders. It talks about the daily operations of the city and how Complete Streets policies are put into place within those operations. It maintains the position of Complete Streets coordinator, and it outlines specific allowed exemptions of when a Complete Streets position or policy that would need to be incorporated would be allowed to be exempt under the new ordinance. And if anyone's interested in following along, in front of you, you do have the redlined version of the bill, so you can see word for word, line by line, exactly how that change plays out. Next slide, please. Section 5 goes into depth about the type of training that would be needed for city staff and to make sure that these various departments and divisions that are implementing the ordinance are coordinated within with the Complete Streets Policy Coordinator. And it expands on the training and what that training means, which wasn't fully done in the previous / current ordinance. Next slide. The implementation of the policy, again, another thing that's more fully laid out in this bill compared to the current ordinance. This discusses who is on the Complete Streets Advisory Committee, what type of notice is mandated for these meetings, that public testimony and comment can be heard, will be heard. And then there's another piece that I think is really important that it's not currently included in this bill, but needs to be incorporated in a further draft, is the collaboration between the city and the Community Mobility Committee, which was established by Resolution 223 in 2020. And that is a robust group that has monthly meetings with many stakeholders in the transportation field. And I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that importance of that committee as we strengthen the city's Complete Streets Advisory Committee, which is made up now and would still be made up of city staff and officials. Next slide. This would give the committee the following responsibilities that are laid out here. You'll note some of these things include policies and procedures regarding planning and design. One of the things that we spell out in the bill is using resources that are available to the city from NACDO and other standardization of infrastructure practices that have been used across the country. It also talks about benchmarks of how we measure success of implementing complete streets in St. Louis. One of the things this bill does is establish these performance measures within 120 days and publishing the data annually. One of the things, then there's a little asterisk on this because we'll talk about it a little bit more later, is to figure out how to incorporate the transportation mobility plan into the bill, as we discussed in the previous hearing on this bill. That is just really getting off the ground now, planning process happening that was funded through American Rescue Plan Act funds to basically create a transportation and mobility plan. But, as citizens of St. Louis, we know what we want to see, and there's been so many planning efforts that have gone on. So making sure this planning effort isn't just ending with, yes, the city needs to update its Complete Streets plan, but instead we can go into that plan knowing what needs to be done and what policies need to be enacted, and then use the planning process to set up their procedures and the processes within the various departments to actually implement what we know is a more modern policy. This also reviews how to get an exemption to some of the Complete Streets things that are mandated by the policy. Reviews the current and upcoming projects, and discusses the implementation report. One of the things that this also talks about is the citywide streets plan, and having that built out in order to carry out the Complete Streets processes. Next slide. So as I mentioned briefly in the previous slide, there has been input from both the community and from various departments within the administration about what things that they would like to see changed in this bill in order to make a bill that works better for the parties I listed. Like I mentioned, is figuring out how to plug in the transportation mobility plan to make sure that we are using that to implement the policies outlined with Board Bill 217, this board bill, discussing a 5-year plan, an annually updated 5-year plan for streets, inclusion of public information campaigns. That was some of the public comment we received 2 weeks ago. And then I think we would be remiss not to discuss how this work gets funded. We have so many different funding streams coming in to fund streets and transportation improvements in our city, and it is pretty fragmented in St. Louis. I guess the good news is, when I was talking the experts from around the country who work on these policies, it's fragmented everywhere. It's not like St. Louis is the only city with a confusing funding system, but I think there's ways that we need to discuss to make how streets get funded in St. Louis a little more streamlined, and that will need additional conversation at the Board of Aldermen as well. Next slide, please. So I'm happy to take any questions on what I just said and anything in particular to the bill. Like I did mention at the beginning, I know we have members of the public here to speak and Director Williams here to speak as well. So I'll leave that up to you, Mr. Chair, if you're ready to move into public testimony.
Does the committee have any questions before we hear public testimony? Okay, let's go ahead and hear public testimony.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, who do we have signed up? And if we could just do a joint swearing in, that would probably be the fastest.
We have 4 in.
Some people on chat, online. So we have 11 people on Zoom to speak. Do you want to?
Okay, if we have a lot of Zoom, why don't we do them one at a time? And if we could just, is everybody in support or do we have people in opposition?
In person, I have 4 in support and 1 undecided.
Okay, use your discretion and let's go ahead and get
We'll do
started.
in person, and then we'll do the. If I can get you in, or get you, if I can have everyone who signed in raise your right hand for me. 1, 2, 3. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay,
Okay, and if we could keep testimony to 3 minutes each.
2 minutes. Okay. Lorraine or Lauren, I'm sorry about the last name. And you'll have 2 minutes. If you'll state what ward you're from or organization and your full name.
Oh, it's clarify. It's 3 minutes per testimony. Thank you.
My name is Lauren Paplampu, and I'm here on behalf of the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. And so on behalf of the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, we are writing in support of the efforts made to update and improve the current Complete Street Ordinance, Board Bill 217. ACS CAN advocates for equitable access to safe physical activity as a key strategy in prevention of chronic diseases, such as cancer. Recognizing the impact of regular physical activity and safe means of transportation to essential activities such as healthcare appointments and grocery store to access healthy food, ACS CAN underscores the importance of creating environments that facilitate safe and inclusive opportunities. As an organization dedicated to uplifting voices for those most impacted, we encourage collaboration between policymakers and community members to make sure that community voices are included in the process to shape this policy and onward during implementation. We align with the principles of a strong complete streets policy as outlined by Smart Growth America's 10 elements of a complete street policy, and look forward to seeing continued iterations of Board Bill 217 that align with these as well.
Thank you for your testimony.
Francis Bruce. In support. That's not.
This is all new to me. I'm actually the union first vice president of Local 96, and we have been notified that there has been.
sorry.
What I need to do.
Is this for Board Bill 217?
I'm not sure what that bill is. I went to the offices and asked for those resolutions. You can give them to me.
Okay, resolution is number 200. We're actually on Board Bill 270.
We're on, yeah.
Okay, so what exactly is that
That's adopting a new policy on how we pave streets.
Oh, no, this policy's been
We're
forward.
on the resolution 200, I believe. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so I'm on resolution
Yeah,
200?
but we're not, that's coming up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Overstep.
Oh, no.
Okay. Alec Belcher.
Put yourself on notice.
I was working out.
Did he?
Nice to see you in person. Haven't seen you in,
I'm waiting for.
thought you were starting your own TV show.
You got the best sense of humor.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to be down here to meet with Luke Allen.
I have Alec Belcher. Would you raise your right hand for me? Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you may proceed, and please state whether you support, if you support Board Bill 217 or in opposition, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I do support Board Bill 217. Complete Streets is really important to me. Like, I know we've all seen the news lately, and it's really clear that we have to act fast about these things. I'm really happy to see the Vision Zero resolution added, and I'm hoping that one day the city can conversely be recognized by Vision Zero as a Vision Zero city. I do have one question. I don't know if you're taking questions right now, but just on page 6, line 6, there is a small section about public engagement of major transportation plans, saying that all preliminary design plans shall be published to the city website and provide an opportunity to accept public feedback for a period of 30 days. I was mainly wondering how this would apply to bi-state development / metro. I just know that with the Jefferson alignment coming up, I found out online that a lot of stops were being removed, and I was kind of thinking like, I don't know if the community's voice has really been heard on that issue, at least from my perspective. So yeah, I was just wondering about how that specific blurb would apply to bi-state. And thank you, Board of Aldermen.
Thank you. And we don't typically do question and answer during testimony, but I do think this is an opportunity for education. Bi-state and the East-West Gateway do not fall into the purview of the Board of Aldermen. That is unfortunate because it means that we don't have input on things like when stops are removed or what method of transportation they use to do. That being said, the board does interact with Bi-State and East-West Gateway in limited ways, and we always welcome input because we can then pass that on to those entities as well as the mayor's office who deals with those entities. So do appreciate your testimony and your feedback, and thank you again.
Nix. Okay, it didn't come up. Christian Form. Oh, okay. Christian Formant. Mr. Formelt, if you would unmute for me and turn, okay. If you'll raise your right hand for me. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do. Okay, if you would just say if you support Board Bill or in opposition of Board Bill 217, and then you may proceed with 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know I would be speaking. I did write in earlier in support of the resolution and in support of the bill. I think that with the level of traffic violence and just cars generally as a nuisance throughout our city, this is a really important discussion that's happening and will lead to some important decisions that are going to deal with the level of car centricity that keeps a lot of people from being mobile and being safe in our city. So I do support the bill. One question that I had just following the presentation that Alderwoman Schweitzer gave was, I don't know what the status of the sustainability director of the city is, but shouldn't the sustainability plan be part of this because our streets and how we get around is also tied to climate change. And when we start thinking about metrics for how we measure the success of how people are moving around the city, if we're emitting less, and if we have more sustainable forms of transportation available. I was just wondering if there was any chance that that aspect in particular would ever be part of this bill. So I support the bill. That's one question that came up just since I've been here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, and I will definitely ask Alderman Schweitzer about sustainability when she closes.
James Murdink.
Hi, I'm with the American Heart Association.
I'm sorry, can you turn on your mic? I'm sorry, your video for me, please.
Sure.
And can you also raise your right hand? Let me swear you in. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And would you state for me, please, if you're in support, opposition, or undecided? And you have 3 minutes.
So we are in support of the bill. My colleague Maura Gray, though, will speak a little bit more to our support. I'm really more on the technical side of things, and if there are any questions later on more technical aspects of the bill, I'm happy to take those. So I will cede my time to my colleague Maura Gray.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Gray, if you'll hold your right hand up for me. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. If you'll state whether you're support, opposition, and undecided, and 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Mara Gray. I serve as the Missouri Government Relations Director for the American Heart Association. We are in support of Board Bill 217. Wanted to first thank Alderwoman Schweitzer for bringing this forward. Much like the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, we support active living, complete streets ordinances because they support heart health and lower rates of cardiovascular disease. My colleague, Jamie Meerdink, who you just heard from, presented on those 10 elements that are included, that we want to see included in a strong policy surrounding complete streets. And we hope that all of those elements will be incorporated into the final version of Board Bill 217. Wanted to reiterate to the committee that we're excited to see this conversation because we hope that it would provide a blueprint for the city as these projects move forward. So hope to hear from more incorporation from the city departments on how we can make sure that everyone's on the same page and make for a comprehensive ordinance. So with that, I didn't have anything else.
Thank you for your testimony.
Nix, if you'll unmute, okay. If you'll hold your right hand up for me. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, if you can also state your full name, whether or not you're in support, opposition, or undecided, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, I'm Nix Evans. I am in support of Board Bill 217. I think it's super important to have like a cohesive plan for how we design the ways that people get around our city, especially one that includes all modes and tries to include especially vulnerable people and the more vulnerable modes to get around. One thing I did want to see on the bill, if it gets any changes from here, is that for the plan for what streets get prioritized, I would love to see if that plan included prioritizing streets based on what streets have the most fatalities or the most injuries. I don't think that's on the list right now. But otherwise, I love the whole bill. I think it's super important to have that exemption system where we're starting from the basis of building things that support everyone and only exempting when there's a reason to. And I think, yeah, I'm just really excited to see this kind of planning done in our city.
Thank you for your testimony.
Malik Lindell. If you'll turn on your microphone and your video for me, please. Malik Lindell?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can
I'm
hear
sorry,
you.
my lighting is a little
No
bad and I'm a
problem.
little sick.
Can you raise your right hand for me? Do you affirm to tell do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, can you please state for the record where you're in support, opposition, undecided, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, so my name's Malik and I'm in support of this bill. I'm from Ward 7 and I'm a cyclist, so I like that we're going to be making sure that people who bike are a big part of how we design our streets. And I also use public transit and I walk in our city. So I think it's going to be just a very important thing to make sure that we're not just an afterthought and that we're also included in our city in a real meaningful way. So I'm excited to see that the Board of Aldermen genuinely care about making this a priority for us. And I want to see more. I also want to second what Nick's mentioned regarding street safety. I also think that it's going to be key when it comes to climate justice to acknowledge the importance of prioritizing other modes and not just cars. So again, I want to thank the Board of Aldermen for working on this bill, and I'm excited to see more to come in regards to street safety, climate justice, and mobility, and the combination of those things. So let's make St. Louis mobile, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else online that would like to give a testimony on Board Bill 217? Please raise your hand. Okay, well, that concludes our speakers. Are you Kelly? I'm sorry. Kelly McGowan? Yes. Okay. Undecided.
All right, can you all hear me? I don't need to bend over, do I?
You're good.
So good afternoon, I'm Kelly McGowan, and I appreciate you all for the opportunity to speak. So I serve as the founder and executive director of Transform 314, and our mission is to educate, engage, and empower Black St. Louisans to drive the policy changes needed at the local level to create thriving communities. In addition, I am a proud resident of the 9th Ward. Looking to develop our advocacy priorities, Transform 314 went to the source, asking residents what they were willing to fight for when it comes to improving their community's built environment. We analyzed feedback from over 450 surveys and 4 focus groups to learn what the top issues were. Our responses were mostly from residents that identified as Black or African American, were under the age of 45, and represented zip codes in the city of St. Louis. Overwhelmingly, the top issue identified was addressing our streets, sidewalks, and lighting. As a result of the feedback received, we are building a coalition of residents and other stakeholders to advocate for our city to fix its streets. Transform 314 is encouraged by the effort to update the city's current complete streets policy. However, the most important stakeholders missing from this conversation are the residents of the city of St. Louis, especially those residing in some of the city's most underinvested communities. Transform 314 hosts monthly community meetings, with its next one being next Wednesday, March 13th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at High Low on Washington Avenue. Smart Growth America, a national expert on complete streets, will be there to share their insight and with attendees about how a strong policy can help with addressing some of the issues we face with unsafe transportation infrastructure. I am extending an invitation to you and the other members, you all, on the committee, as well as members of the public, to join in this important conversation. I watch Board of Aldermen meetings regularly and have witnessed elected leadership ensure residents are able to authentically engage in this process. I implore you to do the same in this instance, as we are just getting started with informing residents of available tools, such as strong complete streets policies that can improve the foundation of their communities, its streets. I've also seen instances where meetings have been held on weekday evening or Saturday morning. This provides an opportunity for all residents to share their thoughts, not just those that are available on a weekday afternoon or morning. A recurrent theme in spaces I frequent is that residents often feel they are ignored and that their government is not working with them, but against them. Something else expressed is that we have two St. Louises, one that sees investment and change and the other that doesn't. I think it's most fitting to begin to address this sentiment through a joint effort to develop a policy whose aim is to connect the city through a network of safe streets. That is the Complete Streets policy. I hope to see you all at our meeting next week. Even if you are unable to make it, I look forward to working with each of you to ensure a thriving city of St. Louis for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. It's always nice to see you.
That concludes our speakers from the public. You didn't sign up?
Yeah, this is my people.
Chair Brown, he would like to speak. You didn't sign up.
Yes, absolutely welcome. And we can
If you'll come up to the mic here, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, and when you come to the mic, state your name and whether you're support, opposition, or undecided.
My name is David Eagleton, and first off, I want to thank Chairman, Alderwoman Ann Schweitzer. I think this is a tremendous asset to the city of St. Louis. I want to thank the committee, and I want to encourage you to pass the Complete Streets Ordinance. It's much needed in the city, but it's not only needed in the city, it's a precedent that's set in the St. Louis region, and the city is leading the efforts in pedestrian safety. And I want to thank you and applaud you for what you're doing, and I think I really hope that you'll move forward. I've made some recommendations to Alderman Schweitzer, some small changes that could improve the ordinance itself. But first and foremost, I really want to thank you because this is real important, and I think it'll have a huge impact in the city and the safety of all users on our dangerous roads. Thank you.
Thank you. And if that concludes our public testimony,
That concludes it.
Alderwoman Schweitzer, you are recognized.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone who gave feedback, and we did get that feedback written down. So at this time, I would like to yield the floor to Director Bethany Williams, if it's all right with Vice Chair Browning.
Absolutely. Director Williams, you are recognized to speak. Thank you for being here today.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Do I get 3 minutes? And then
No,
get this?
you have as much time as you'd like.
I only want 3.
And there's no need to swear you in as you are a city employee.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to share today. This is a topic that has been in discussion for a while now. Just on a personal note, I think that ones that may have known me from my past life, as well as what I have shown since I've been an employee here with the city, is that all modes of transportation and the mobility of all is very important to me. And with that, I have tried to make different strides and steps to make sure that the city, in our planning for the future, how we do business, how we look at the streets department as a whole, as well as the two entities that we work well with, which is the planning department and BPS, how we all work together cohesively so that we understand from the top to the bottom, the planning, designing, construction, to maintaining are all key parts in how we look at mobility for everyone across the city. I want to spend some time talking about the functions of the streets department. So the streets department is designed to maintain what has been planned, designed, and built. In some cases, yes, we work with alders and we see small things that we can go in and make some minor changes to, but most of the work that is new development, newly designed, it all goes through BPS and through the planning cycle, and then it comes to us to maintain it. And in some of those processes, working with BPS and planning, we find that, okay, it's just striping changes. And those are some of the things that the streets department can maintain in-house. And so we tend to do that. With this bill, do I support it? Yes. Is it the proper time? That's where I have questions. Or I ask that we look at the timing of this board bill. it is needed. I do think anything that was developed 10 years ago, 5 years ago, as we change as a city, needs to be updated. So I do agree with the changes. How we implement the changes is all things that are important. But just looking at the key pieces that the city has put in place. If we go back to Board Bill 120, which provided funds for the citywide transportation mobility plan. First and foremost, this is a plan that the city of St. Louis has never had. We've had all different types of plans. We've had all different types of tools in our toolbox, but nothing that never has looked at the city cohesively. Something that not block by block we're designing by, how we calm traffic, how do we limit speeding, how do we stop speeding, how do we protect cyclists in this one block or 2 blocks or on this major corridor. This plan will allow us the opportunity to see it on a holistic level. So where you take into consideration your businesses, you take into consideration your hospitals, you take into consideration all of these different small key components of what plays into making sure that we are a safe and a mobile city. These are all the things that make you a smart city, as people say, or how you develop a city that is mobile for all users. And so that's why I think it's important that we allow the process of the citywide mobility plan to take its place, do its work, which we know it's already been awarded. We're working on the final contract now, and then that process will roughly take 18 months. And then we should start seeing. What this will give us is tools that we can look at our ADA transition plan that we have now approved. We also look at our traffic calming standards. These are 2 main key components with the city that everyone should be able to look at and say, this is how you should design. So when I do go into a conversation with the alderperson to look at how do you calm the traffic in my ward, Bethany? How do we make improvements? Okay, we can pull all of these key components out and say, this is what could be implemented in your area, instead of just saying speed humps. Instead of just saying, oh, let's drop the speed limit sign. Or instead of us just saying, oh, let's put a new stop sign in. Or instead of us saying, oh, let's add 3 crossing guards on every block of the school. This will give us the opportunity to see what's needed and what will help the overall component of the corridor when we're planning. So we also have to look at, turning radiuses for our first responders. Are they able to get in and out of these neighborhoods? That's a key component to everything that we're designing. And what this will do, this plan will give us the ability to see that. So I think it's important that we look at how we make changes and include more people. I was just listening to some of the key points that will be talked about today, talking about the funding, who all is included in this process and on this team, the implementation, training of employees. Who's going to be doing this work? Who's going to be doing this design work? These are all key components that make a city's transportation run very smoothly and effectively. But I do believe that if we allow the time for the transportation mobility plan, we will see some of these 10 key components that we've heard of that are true fact. Across the country, these are components that are used. And what we're looking at, we've hired a consultant that will give us that will best fit the city of St. Louis as we move forward with our service and being mobile to all users. I know last meeting, I try to sit and I look at some of the meetings when I have time. And it was brought up about being not just the streets, looking at sidewalks as well. That's something that the streets department, I have said, how can we improve this? How can we improve sidewalks? And looking at what the streets department is responsible for, that's the 50/50 sidewalk program. And in that, I decided, or I made the plea, if we could get ARPA dollars to look at how we can start some of these investments with the 50/50 sidewalk program and make some of those improvements. And so that's what we did. We were awarded $6 million with ARPA dollars, and we've allocated funds to each individual ward. Now, we know that the 50/50 sidewalk program is by request only, a resident request. We know some residents may not have a computer. They may not even know that they can request these services, or they have the 50/50 match. These ARPA dollars that we have here, it allows us to do more and rely less on the residents as well. This is also covering the increase of concrete costs. Everything has gone up in cost. So with these dollars, it's my hope that we see how these funds will work from ARPA dollars, and then we can move forward budgeting items on an annual basis of how we can maintain our assets across the city of St. Louis. So the last thing I want to talk about is just how we're budgeting. This fiscal year in the city of the streets department, I encourage the commissioners to think outside the box with how they budget. Not only budget to be reactive, budget to be proactive. How do we develop a plan? How do we manage our assets? And so when you see the budget request that the streets department has brought forward, it will cover some of those things. It will cover some of the paving of our arterial routes. It will cover some of our minor routes and put it on a plan. If we were to have funds, if the skies would just fall open with funds and we could just repave our whole city, in the next 15 to 20 years, we'll be back in the same place or a worse place. And so it's important that we prioritize our pavements. We put it on a schedule every 5 years. Every year, we're repaving certain streets across the city of St. Louis. And this combination will be a combination of not only just major arterials, but this will be our residentials as well as our secondary streets as well. And so I think that all of the things that are in place now will help us be able to support this plan moving forward. So I want to say thank you. I do believe that it's needed. I think that it's something that should be looked at, but it's the timing. I just really would hope that we can allow the mobility plan to run its course, and then we can come back from there to see what has been identified in the mobility plan, what needs to be part of the ordinance, and what is just operational services that we're doing and making sure that they're followed. So with that, I think that's it, and I'll turn it over for questions.
Thank you. We'll go through the committee in order of seniority to see if anyone has any questions. Alderman Vollmer.
Not so much a question as a comment, because being down here for quite some time, we know that this, even if it passes, when you're talking about timing, is going to take some time to implement. Even what you're talking about passed some time ago, and it's still taking time to get in place. So I wouldn't fear passing this out now by any means, because it's just like anything else. It's just like what we passed for the short-term rentals. Just getting everything in place is going to take some time. So I think passage of this right now, and I appreciate your concerns and things, but I think, being the old man up here, that I believe that this could pass and we could still use the input from what you're talking about. And I think this would all work hand in hand very well together. But thank you for your time, and thank you for your service.
Right. Thank you so much. And I agree. I think that we will be at a place, but I just don't want us to be at a place where we're back at this point because the plan identifies something that we really want to put into the ordinance. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
Now or later.
We've never worried about getting things done too quickly down here since I've been around, but that's never been our fear. But I wish it was.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Alderwoman Keys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Williams, thank you so much for being here today and for your testimony, as well as those people who have come here to speak in favor or even in opposition. I thank everybody for their time. I really don't have any questions. I am kind of in awe of the plan, just as everyone else is. I would love to see this implemented. But as the old man, he referred to himself, has already said, we know it's going to take some time. So I shall wait with bated breath until it is revealed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you, Director, for being here, and everybody who came to testify online or in person. And I want to thank you again, personally, Director. I know you get a lot of requests from us, and I'm glad that the Alderwoman brought this forward because recently we've been seeing a lot of traffic situations. But to be honest, that's nothing new to St. Louis. You know, sometimes I feel like things spark up and like, oh, we got to do something. We should have, been doing something on some of these situations. And I do hear you on, let's get somewhere. But the old man said it, but I'm gonna say as a young man, I wish he was in here because me and him like going back and forth. But it would be interesting to see how. I know that ordinance was passed about 10 years ago, and 16. So what are we in? 24. So about 8 years ago, and we still planning. And I know nothing happens overnight in St. Louis. We down staff and stuff like that. But I know your department is working diligently, and this mayor's office is working diligently to get things done. It would be interesting to see how, with that being almost 10 years ago, how some of these new components, not saying let's just not do anything. I think that's one thing I've learned in the city is so antiquated. It's like we just need to wait. And it's like, well, we've been waiting for a long time. And that could be the youth in me because young people want it done quick. But I would be interested in seeing, where could the compromise be on what needs to be updated, since it is, so long ago from the plan. What needs to be updated that so once that plan is complete, we don't have to come back in another 10 years or another 8 years or a new board to say, well, we probably should have put that in. So, but I hear what you're saying. I hear some things are in the works. I think it's also good as things are moving. We can always analyze them during the process to say, how can we keep walking and also, put the sneakers on so now that we can run. And I think some of the things in here is interesting on some ways that we can modernize and update what the current ordinance looks like. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Aldridge. I have to agree, 8 years is a long time, and updating complete streets. Now I have to wonder how many people have we lost in the last 8 years? How many people are no longer here with us because they lost their lives on our streets? And some of us have seen the video of what happened downtown a couple weeks ago after the Drake concert. And more importantly, some people saw that video that weren't from St. Louis. It was a video that went viral nationally. And it shames me to think that that's how people will think of St. Louis, that they might come here and not return home. And so it hurts our city in multiple ways beyond just losing our own residents, but also deterring people from even wanting to come here and spend their time here. Sorry to start off on such a dark note. It's hard for me. I really appreciate you being here today, Director, and I understand that the Streets Department is in charge of maintaining the streets that we have, is not so much on the design side of things. But I'm curious right now, does anything in particular in Board Bill 217 prevent the TMP from being implemented?
So what I would say, I like the layout of the board bill. I like the changes that have come. I do believe that we need to be more technical of just what the expectations are. I think high level, the 10 points that were presented, I even personally am waiting anticipation to see where will we line up with the standards that have been given for mobility in a city. So those are the types of things that I think that adding that will keep us on a track that no matter what changes over 5, 10, 15 years, these will be the standards, and these 10 topics will always be addressed anytime any planning and designing is being done. And right now, currently, it's speaking more, just operational, how we should man it. But I think it should be a section on the technical approach of how these are designed, how they're planned, how they're built. These are the expectations that have been approved by not only the citizens, but by the Board of Aldermen, as well as supported by all of the different plans that we have currently are being studied and to be put in place.
Well, thank you. And I think that we are eager to work with your department and BPS and planning to make sure that we are working in a way that the city departments can handle, especially with the way we are structured and those responsibilities split between those different departments.
Right.
To me, streets are one of the main things that our city is responsible for at the very minimum. Everyone, regardless of their identity, of their status, they use their streets to get from where they are to where they're going.
Right.
Sidewalks too, right? Not everyone thinks of themselves as someone who walks around, but even if you're parking your car, you use the sidewalk to get from your car to your destination. So these things are really, really important to how we serve our citizens. I know that the street department's charge is vast. We have, I'm not sure what the number is, but probably hundreds, maybe thousands of miles of streets to maintain and even more sidewalks. So first, I do want to thank you and your workers in your department for the work they do every day. I know it's not easy. I know that they're out there sometimes in 100-degree heat. And so I just want to acknowledge the workers that do really, literally put their backs into it and make sure that we're all using streets that are both, well-maintained and safe every day. I do have a question about utilities. Alderwoman Schweitzer recently elevated an issue in my ward, and I'm really glad she did. The issue is Gibson Avenue. It's been torn up by Spire for a project that they're doing. I'm sure the project is necessary, important, and will probably help the people in that area. But the damage they've done to the street is extensive, with large patches of pavement being torn up on both sides of the street for entire blocks. And they are patching the holes, but rather poorly. Upon inquiring with Nancy Cross, Director of Operations, I was informed that Spire will be putting the street to grade, while the street department will do the repaving. And I was also told that Spire will be paying for that repaving. Is that the standard practice that we follow?
So I can't remember the exact ordinance that speaks to how they acquire a permit, and from the permit, they can either decide to do the paving work, but in most cases, do you want a concrete company doing asphalt work? It's like, ugh. So, or a pipe company doing asphalt work. So the standard is, or how it's typically done, is that they pay for the material that we utilize to pave the streets, to asphalt over the streets. This has not really been done since like 2019. I have, from the email that I received, I think maybe from a phone call or meeting in my office we had about where's the funding going, who's accepting the funding, all of this, who's doing the paving. All of these questions have come up, which I'm now investigating to determine all of those answers. Where's the funding going? Who's doing the work? But currently, since 2019, really the pandemic, us having a shortage of asphalt crews, us having a shortage of employees, what these utility companies have been doing is they fill it back to grade, which means it shouldn't be a lip or shouldn't be where before they did it like 1.5 inches or 2 inches low, and then we would come in and asphalt over the entire block or whatever, which that's not what's happening now. Because of the shortage of employees that we had in the streets department, what they're currently doing is bringing the patches up to grade. So they're making it flush as easy, or, with the current pavement that's around the hole that they've cut out. We are seeing that they're not performing to those expectations. We're finding that once the concrete settles, it's leaving lips, or it's breaking, or freeze-thaw temperatures, things of those natures are all the things that we're currently looking at. But this was before my time. And so now just working with all of our utility companies to get them back on track. How do we look at the permit? How do we close out the permit? How do we hold them accountable for doing the paving work again? But I will say that prior to, and really in 19 was like the last year that we did the overlay work. They have just been directed to bring it back up to grade with the concrete, and then we work with paving with Ward Capital or however we're paving the streets from there.
Thank you. You kind of addressed some of what I was going to point out, which is that, after many winters, the pavement moves or buckles, sinks, cracks, shifts, and then the streets look and feel as if they're poorly maintained. I'm aware that the city only has 2 paving machines. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so, and I'm aware that on a recent tour of the supply division, we heard that a new paving machine costs about $700,000. But even if we had, say, a 3rd paving machine, or even if we had 10 paving machines, the issue is personnel.
Right.
So that's helpful to understand, because as we try to grow our city, as we try to add more employees, the residency requirement being gone, hopefully that helps. As we can try to provide competitive wages, those will all help make our streets safer and better.
Right.
I'm wondering, so you said that you're looking into where the money goes, where it's kept. So you might not know the answer to my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because this is something I think would be helpful. Is there a way for alders to know what has been budgeted? Because, for instance, say with Gibson Avenue, now I have a street that's been all torn up. I don't know what to tell my residents of when that'll be repaved. I can budget Ward Capital to get it repaved in a year or 2, but shouldn't I be drawing from the funds that the utilities pay us for the damage they've done? I mean, that to me feels like we're paying for the damage that somebody else has done.
So in my early reading of this, just my, getting started. So the line item that the funds go into does not cover asphalt. So that's one piece of it. So really and truly, the funds that come back to the departments for the work that we're doing, we quote them a cost, and then it goes into resealant. So like the black asphalt tar looking resealant material that we use, that is where the bulk of those funds go. I can find that information. Actually, I left it on my desk because I printed it out. And share that information to kind of talk through where the funds go, where's the line item. The comptroller, I've put in requests to see what's the budget in these, what's the dollar amount that are in these current line items that we have now. Has any of it been spent since 2019? Has anything been deposited in there since 2019? These are all questions that I have that hopefully I will be able to answer more efficiently or effectively than what I'm able to give now. So I am looking into it to figure out where is the line item, how are we spending out of that? Is that line item part of my FY 2024 budget? Like, is this revenue that I'm looking at that when we're spending, are we using this to purchase materials? What are we using this line item for? And exactly when was the last time funds were removed or even added to that account?
Thank you. I really look forward to what you find out there, because it strikes me that if we're not getting enough money to make it like it was before they tore it up, then the city is getting a very, very bad deal here.
Yes.
And it hurts me because everywhere I go in the city, it's not potholes that's the problem, it's utility work. There are entire streets that there's nothing wrong with them other than long trenches that have been dug and then poorly filled, and the years go by. So the schedule here matters, because I think returning to grade would be fine if it was only a couple months until it got repaid, but returning to grade if anything more than 6 months goes by and it becomes problematic. And then it makes it more difficult for people to use other modes of transportation too. As I used to be a bike commuter, I used to bike every day. I would actively avoid riding on the places where the utilities had repaired because it was bumpy and dangerous, and you wouldn't be sure if you'd catch a lip somewhere. So it plays right into the safety of our streets. I also have a question about when as a result of reckless driving or construction or anything else, when there's damage done to our streets or our different things that are part of the street's purview, such as street lamps or traffic control devices or pedestrian signals. Recently, we had a car run off the road and take out a pedestrian signal on Kings Highway. There's a lamp post on Roger Place by Hartford Coffee that got hit by a car, and it's a stump with wires sticking out right now. It's been that way for almost a year. What is the city's process for recovering funds and being able to replace those things that are destroyed by, I guess, what you would unfortunately call the day-to-day use of our roads?
So I can speak more to our light poles, our signal cabinets, things of that nature. We budget back when I was talking earlier about looking at how we budget for reactive and proactive. Right now, we currently only budget to replace what's being knocked down. What we're finding in some of these historical areas where they have some of this more historical lighting, we're just not able to get that lighting structure anymore, or it's on back order from the manufacturer. Things of that nature is what we're waiting for, why they can't be replaced. But what I will say is we look at how now as we design and we work with neighborhoods and wards and they want historical decorative lighting, things of that nature, we ask them to take into consideration maintenance. What will it cost to maintain that? What will it, because some of these things are not, some of these items are not what the city covers in our annual budget to maintain. And so because of that, it leaves us at a place, where do we get the funding from? Now we have to go and try to order these different materials where, sometimes they're, like I said, they're on back order or they don't even exist. In some of our historical districts, some of the more historical lighting, they don't even make those fixtures anymore. And so that's what we're seeing is the problem. Our main Cobra lights, things of that nature, we budget to replace what's knocked down. So this year in the traffic budget, you will see where we're trying to get more on to fix what's being knocked down, but also a proactive approach. In the next 5 years, what is the lifespan of each of these signals? What is the lifespan of each of these different cabinets and different components? And then putting it on a schedule where these items can be replaced. So we're just trying to take a different approach to how we budget and taking more off of the alders and more on the streets department as to how we budget and we can maintain these things with the support of the theoretical backing to support it, making those purchases and those investments.
Thank you. And yeah, this is just a standard Cobra light. I would understand if it's like one of the Central West End's Griffin lights or something like that, which is, I don't even know where we have extra one of those. But you mentioned the alder and the alders and their and working with them. I'm wondering if the ward capital system is part of the problem here, that it fragments our city's transportation planning into 14 different wards or 28 different wards in the past. That it puts the alderperson in control of the funding, which means that projects don't even get planned or started to get planned until they know that the alder is on board, which means that if the alder isn't inclined, whether due to political pressure or simply because they aren't a traffic expert, that the work never gets done. Would you think that in order to have better planning and as the TMP is prepared, do you think that a change in funding is necessary?
Yes, I do believe that with allocated funding to the department to cover these things, then we're able to do asset management and be more proactive in how we repair and replace across the city of St. Louis. Right now, a lot is dependent on ward capital. I know the department is currently now preparing for ward meetings. So where we talk about ward capital meetings, sit down and look at everything in your ward that has been damaged, or, over the last 5 years, these are the requests we've gotten, or I've encouraged the team to develop a pavement evaluation team, and they're going out and they're evaluating the pavement so that I can say to you, these are your top 5 or your top 10, you know, as much money as you want to give to the funding. This is where we see the priorities are of any of those different structure, you know, different types of assets in the ward. Without that, if more funds were given to the streets department, then we will be able to put together a citywide list that could say, this is over this year, out of the 5-10-year plan, this is what will be fixed. These are the assets that will be replaced. These are the worst pavements in the city as a whole, and we have the assets, or we can ask for the assets the following year to do that pavement work or make those enhancements to the lighting structures or things of that nature. So I think that how we're looking at budgeting moving forward, the current system, you know, we just have to work with what we have, but I challenge the team to put it on paper and make sure that it's seen. This is what we need for us to get to a more proactive place and a more proactive city.
Excuse me if I can interrupt. I just got a message that the sound went off online.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman Keys. STL TV, do we know of that issue? I think the sound went out online. They're not able to hear us. Thank you for your patience for figure this out.
Testing, testing.
We want to make sure
Yeah.
you can hear online. Okay, I think we're back then. All right, we will proceed. Yep, we're good. Okay. We're good. All right. Thank you. And thank you. I'm almost finished with my questioning. I appreciate this is very helpful information. You mentioned, so with damage, is there any part of your department or perhaps in coordination with the city councilor to go after the insurance companies of people who cause damage?
Yes, so we have, we fill out claims. We identify how much it would cost to replace the item. And then you have residents that are bringing checks in, paying for items that they've knocked down. You are just not residents, whoever hit the pole, the sign, whatever it is, that we're sending out claims and bills to say that these items you've damaged and you have to replace or fund to replace, hopefully.
That is a relief. I think our goal here is to empower the departments to do the best job that they can. And it's incredibly helpful for us to have this kind of dialogue. I'm very excited to see what the TMP puts in place and creates in an ongoing way. You mentioned a paving plan as part of that. So there's not currently a paving plan, is that correct?
No.
And I know you came from MoDOT, and MoDOT has a paving plan for their roads. And so this is something you've been trying to implement since you took over?
Yes, and so now we're at the place where this last year, the list that we provided was just based off of concerns that we had gotten because we hadn't had anyone that had really evaluated the streets. We really hadn't had anyone that went out and did that legwork. And so hopefully this paving season, we will be able to see more. One, we're looking at the corridors that were associated with the ARPA dollars. That's our number one priority. And then from there, we will move into residential streets. Once you all have received, these are the top residential streets in your ward. What would you like to pave or what would you like to fund to get paved? Once that's done, then we will add it to a master list. My plan is that that list will be a active live list that as they pave, more projects will go to the top of the list and it will just be ongoing, something that I can share, very transparent leader. I'm not one to, have a list and no one else can see the list. I tell the guys all the time, I'm like, I need to see it. They're like, oh, no, we have it. No, I need to. So my plan is to have a list that everyone can see and it will be available to the alders as we're working in your ward. Really now, we tend to work with the aldermen to say, hey, we're in your ward or whatever, wherever we are working, so that you know the situations at hand. I've tried to do better with communicating. Last paving season, just saying, oh, we're boundering, or oh, we have major work, stuff like that. But getting a communications person in place for the department that can have more of that one-on-one communication responsibility is another priority of the department.
Okay, that sounds like good progress. You had mentioned the ARPA money going towards the corridors, and I'm very much eagerly anticipating that. But I'm a little concerned that, and this is, I don't think, part of the streets purview, but I think I'm a little concerned that as we go through and repave some of these corridors, that if we don't introduce traffic calming when we do that, that we're going to see even higher speeds on the roads because they'll just be very smooth. Like it or not, the potholes actually serve as some sort of natural traffic calming right now. So I'm concerned about roads like I have Lindell in my ward for a good stretch between Vanaventer all the way over to Union. And it's in need of repaving in a lot of ways. A lot of it is due to utility work. But I'm very concerned about repaving that in completely without having some sort of a traffic calming plan to make sure that people are not being hurt, because it's also a very busy pedestrian area. So I hope that the TMP will be addressing that as well, in addition to just paving plans acknowledging, as one person mentioned, deaths and fatalities, injuries that occur, as well as just usage. That's the other thing that doesn't make sense by the way we allocate ward capital right now. Some streets see a lot more use in the city than other streets. And in this example, I'll use Kings Highway in my ward, which is right by the hospital, which probably sees tens of thousands of people every week. So getting a plan in place, I think, will be very helpful. And I want to state for the record, I'm supportive of this legislation because I think it's important for the Board of Aldermen to work together with the Streets Department, BPS, and planning to make sure that as we make these plans, we're taking into account what the public is looking for. Right. And since the Board of Aldermen is the representation for the public, it's our job to lift those voices up to you all. But I appreciate the acknowledgement of a public paving plan would be very helpful to our constituents to let them know what's coming up, what they can expect, so that they're not emailing us with questions and then we're not pestering you all with questions.
I totally agree with that. And that's just the communication piece of the Streets Department has, they've operated that we know what we're doing, see what we're doing, and so just get out of that bubble of life and make ourselves more transparent of what we're doing, and so that people can see the work that we're doing in the Streets Department.
Thank you. And so one last question I have for you. So with Board Bill 120 and the paving that's occurring there in the coming year, with the city's 2 paving machines, I'm a little concerned that those are going to be tied up, paving Jefferson and Grand and Kings Highway. Is there a thought that all of these non-arterial streets, these residential streets, are going to have to wait until 2027, 2028 in order to be done?
It's my plan that they don't have to wait that long. I've also been looking into what to contract out some of this work. What would that look like? Because of paving costs, it's almost double what we currently have in the budget to contract out work, but looking at different avenues of how we can get some of this work done. At no given time do I want to just focus on arterials and then let our residentials and alleys and things of that nature sit for another year, 2 years, 3 years until we're done with that work. So figuring out a plan that we can work them all together at the same time if possible.
Okay, contracting out would be one way to help expand our capacity so we don't fall farther behind while we're trying to take care of the big ones and let the small things fall through the cracks.
Right. And so, yes, that's a funding thing that I'm working to figure out how we can get through that.
Okay, well, as we all know, recent engagement we've done around both ARPA dollars and around the RAM settlement returned as top results that our streets are a top priority for St. Louisans. We've heard this over and over again. And then we continue to have headlines that just really speak to the need that's out there. So I think it is the priority of not only this committee, but the whole board to make sure that your department, that BPS, and that planning all have the resources they need to make sure that when we do go down to repave our streets, to redesign them, that we're doing it the best we can so that we are both saving lives, preventing injuries, and saving our taxpayers money by not spending the resources inefficiently and causing them to have to, repair their car because they hit a pothole or something like that.
Right.
I really appreciate you again coming today. It's been very, very educational. And as we go forward, I just urge again to have a very collaborative relationship. So until we can fix some of these funding issues, we can make sure that you have the resources you need.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this opportunity today.
Thank you. And Alderwoman Schweitzer, you are recognized to close.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here today and for taking the time to ask thoughtful questions and discuss this bill at length. I appreciate everyone who came from the public to testify. We took notes on the suggestions involving the sustainability plan, the sustainability director, making sure that we're being really thoughtful with the planning process of this policy now. I appreciate the input, and I do think, of course, there's more time for public comment and more that we can do to make sure the public are involved in this bill. Director Williams, she made a lot of really good points. I think one of the things the Transportation Mobility Plan will do is a review of the policies that are in place in the city and how they're working, how they're not working, how they could work better. So when we think of our opportunity now to pass a better, more modern, complete streets policy that would then allow the Transportation Mobility Plan to review and make sure it's implemented in a way that it is the most effective for the city of St. Louis, I think the timing couldn't be any better, really, for us to work on this policy before the Transportation Mobility Plan basically just tells us we need a better policy, which we already know. One of the things I feel like we do is we spend time on paying a lot of consultants to do work, and I agree that they're very helpful and useful and have a lot of information, but our salaries are also paid in order to look at policies, new policies, sure that we are going through the policies that exist in our city and are taking the time to make them better with our time here as aldermen as well. So I do think we have a crucial role in forming policies, and Director Williams has been wonderful about taking the time to sit down with me and talk about what the Streets Department does and some of the planning processes that are discussed in this bill and will hopefully be further fleshed out as we move along this process. And so that's all I have to say on this bill. And like I did mention, the next committee hearing of this bill will be on Monday, March 25th. But there was an opportunity next week for members of the board to hear more community feedback at the Transform 314 meeting. I will certainly be there and taking down everything everybody says. And we will work to find another time for an official community feedback evening or weekend time, as long as we can work that out with STLTV and the clerks to make that work for everyone's schedule, so that we can make sure that that does happen too before final passage or out of this committee. So I appreciate it, and that's all on Board Bill 274 for today.
Okay. Does the committee have any more questions for Alderwoman Schweitzer? No? Okay. I did promise one of the people who testified that I'd ask you about sustainability. So can you tell me about how sustainability...
I appreciate that. As I noted in my comments, I think it's a great suggestion, and I think figuring out a way to incorporate sustainability into this bill makes a lot of sense. There is the the Complete Streets Committee that is further lined out in this bill does discuss having representatives from the health department, from developmental disabilities board. It talks about having the Office of the Disabled, Missouri Department of Transportation by state. So I think there's a place there to add in a seat on the board for the sustainability director as well, which hopefully answers the involvement question that gentleman brought up, but I'm happy to look for other ways to implement as well. And I do think, when we are working on bills, we're trying to do better than what we have currently. In no way am I trying to say that this bill is the end-all, be-all complete streets policy and no change will ever be made in the future. And I think that there's still room to make this bill better for what we know now. So I appreciate the public comment.
Thank you. And I noted that somebody else asked about crashes, injuries, and fatalities being factored into this. And I did want to note for the record that on page 11 of the bill, you can see under item E of the duties of the committee shall include, it says, I guess it's item A and then small e, rate of crashes, injuries, and fatalities by mode. So
Right.
This is a very complete streets policy.
Thank you, Alderman. I appreciate that. I do think that the intention of this bill is really to give a lot more parameters around what sort of information is looked at when we're making decisions. So I think that is very helpful to point out, and it will help us do a better job as a city to use our money efficiently. We don't have endless funds in St. Louis, but we can certainly have more funds to use for better projects if we're not wasting money on projects that maybe it's not the right time for. So this bill does strive to be more thoughtful in how we decide where to spend money and where to do work in the city.
Absolutely. Using our resources efficiently is essential, especially when we don't have many. So again, I appreciate you and this bill, and think that this is a really, really thoughtful approach. So unless you have anything else to say, I will hand the chairmanship back to you, and we will resume the meeting.
Well, the only thing I guess I have to say is my next thing is me too. So I might need
I guess we're just going to keep rolling then.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, we're going to close on discussion of Board Bill 217, and we will now consider resolution number 200.
Thank you. So this is a resolution which adopts a Vision Zero policy. And for the discussion, before we dive in, I wanted to have the clerk please read the resolution into the record.
Resolution number 200, introduced by the Honorable Ann Schweitzer, Alderwoman of the First Ward. Whereas it's the adoption of Vision Zero policy. Whereas the life and health of all persons living and traveling within the city of St. Louis are our utmost priority, and no one could die or be seriously injured while traveling on our streets. And whereas Vision Zero is the concept that traffic deaths and serious injuries on our roadways are unacceptable. And whereas Vision Zero is a holistic strategy aimed at eliminating all traffic fatalities and severe injuries suffered by all road users while increasing safe, healthy, equitable mobility for all. And whereas streets and transportation systems have traditionally been designed primarily to move cars efficiently, and Vision Zero supports a paradigm shift by designing streets and transportation systems to move all people safely, including people of all ages and abilities, pedestrians, bicyclists, public transit users, scooter riders, and motorcyclists, as well as drivers and passengers of motor vehicles. And whereas Vision Zero recognizes that people will sometimes make mistakes, so the road system and related policy should be designed to ensure that those inevitable mistakes do not result in severe injuries or fatalities. Therefore, transportation planners and engineers and policymakers are expected to improve the roadway environment, policies, and other related systems to lessen the severity of crashes. And whereas 78 people in the city of St. Louis lost their lives to traffic deaths in the year of 2020, and traffic crashes are among the leading causes of deaths in the United States. And whereas the city of St. Louis's transportation infrastructure serves as an increasing number of vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians and cyclists, and whereas according to TrailNet, a local transportation nonprofit, in the year 2022, a total of 200 pedestrians, 60 cyclists, and an incredible 5,416 drivers or passengers were affected by either loss of life, injury, or property damage. And whereas speed is recognized as a major determining factor of survival in a crash, And whereas the City of St. Louis will work toward reducing vehicle speeds because the likelihood of a pedestrian surviving a crash is 10% if hit by a vehicle moving 40 miles per hour. And whereas children, older adults, people of color, persons with disabilities, people who are unhoused, and people who are of low income face a significantly disproportionate risk of traffic injuries and fatalities. And whereas making streets safer for all people using all modes of transportation will encourage people to travel on foot, by bicycle, and by public transit, which supports a healthier, more active lifestyle and reduces environmental pollution. And whereas successful Vision Zero programs are a result of both a complete government approach and community support of Vision Zero objectives and action plans. And whereas Vision Zero resolutions have been adopted by many jurisdictions across the United States, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen that the board hereby adopts the following Vision Zero goals as attached. Introduced this first day of March 2024 by the Honorable Ann Schweitzer, Alderwoman, 1st Ward.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the committee hearing this resolution today. So one of the things that Vision Zero strives to do, as the clerk read in the resolution, is that the goal is to reduce traffic deaths to zero, and to look at every decision we make in the city of St. Louis as part of that goal. Really, this resolution should have been something that we passed a long time ago, but it really came to light to me that having this as our mentality is how we make decisions is so crucial, especially when last week we were talking about the automated traffic enforcement bill, and it was sort of looked at as sort of a separate topic of violence. We have gun violence and we have traffic violence, and we hold one to a much higher standard than the other. And in some ways, that makes sense. Absolutely, violent crime is violent crime, but traffic violence, just because it's done by a car or a person driving a car, shouldn't negate the deep and sincere responsibility that the city of St. Louis has to address any death that is happening in our city. So if someone gets hit by a car, we should be taking it very, very seriously. We should be building our city's policies around enforcement, around education, around infrastructure, and preventing death of pedestrians, of road users, of anyone on our roads. So what this resolution does is it puts out there that this is our intent, that this is the seriousness of which we are looking at these policies in the city. We understand that the decisions we make around infrastructure, around enforcement, around education, around so many things when it comes to the policies on our streets in St. Louis, that we're not just talking about minor inconveniences, but we are talking about preventing the loss of life in our city. It is, we have incidents that occur that bring it so clearly, distinctly to light of how crucial and how important this is. But we need to be thinking about this as a crucial, important thing that we're doing here on this committee and throughout the city every single day. So I appreciate the consideration that you all have around this resolution.
Thank you. Do we have anyone signed up from the public to speak on Resolution 200?
We have no public speakers.
Okay. With that, I'll ask the committee, by order of seniority, if they have any questions for Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Vollmer.
Certainly. Well, no more comments than questions. There's no questions as this is a necessity. Crossing the street, sitting in your car while your light is red when it turns green, and having to count the 3 Mississippi before you feel safe, hitting your accelerator is a daily occurrence for, myself and for everyone. There is just abandonment on the streets of St. Louis currently. It is the most complaints I get lately. It is just, unfortunately, we don't have the officers to control this. Electronic enforcement, which you're considering, is a necessity. But we have blatant disregard for traffic laws, a very me-oriented, I have to get there, I don't care about anyone else mindset while I'm texting. And I take 3 and 4 mile walks every day and try and cross Kings Highway to get to Tower Grove Park. And just standing at the intersection, I am overwhelmed by the amount of medical or recreational marijuana smells as I'm standing there as people are driving, because apparently they don't believe it's the same thing as drinking and driving. So you have reckless, thoughtless people, unfortunately, on the streets of St. Louis in a 2 or 3 or 4 ton vehicle, doing speeds of 40, 50 miles an hour with no care for anything but themselves. And unfortunately, that's putting us all in danger. It's more dangerous than, I don't know, you probably add it up. I don't know if I feel safer, walking into a room where I know 3 guys have guns or trying to cross Kings Highway. My life is in my hands at all times. So anything and everything we can do to impose some sort of traffic control, traffic calming, and ticketing, and putting some fear into these people who have no fear, because we have laws. Every law we need is on the book. We just don't have the people to enforce them. So we need the boots on the ground, but we'll do everything we can in the other ways. Thank you for my time.
Do you mind if I speak to that for just a second?
Please do.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Alderman Vollmer. I think you really laid out some of the things I was trying to say with the importance of recognizing that it's still a potential violent act that could occur when you're simply trying to cross the street. I was joking, but not really joking, with my wonderful legislative assistant, Christian Bishop, earlier today, that when you cross the street in St. Louis, you don't just look both ways. You need to do a full 360-degree turn and pray. And so those are the things that, when we're thinking about what we're talking about down here, recognizing that it is that serious, that part of everyone's daily life, that these incredibly traumatic, possibly life-ending instances can occur at any moment. And what are we doing to make that as infrequent, as never happening as possible? So I appreciate your comments greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Keys.
Thank you, Alderman Vollmer. He generally brings that sage wisdom to any conversation. Brings out the flavor. But thank you so much, Alderwoman Schweitzer, for bringing both bills 217 and 200 to the table. And so I am very happy that we're talking about some issues that truly, all of the issues we do talk about affect our day-to-day lives. There are things that happen on a national level that are important, but what happens in our day-to-day lives really impacts our city. And so I hope, pray that these bills will hope to really advance our city in the way that travel in our city happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you, Alderwoman Schweitzer, for bringing this forward, and to echo the comments from my colleagues before me that has a sage and wisdom. I think this is some very important. I know how important, we all kind of got our issues that we kind of get on at the board, but I know how important traffic calming is, not just to you, but to the full board. Right, you've been hammering home that we really do need to do something, and I just appreciate your continuous leadership on trying to look at many ways how we keep our streets safe, if it's through legislation or being able to go out in the public to talk about it. And I know you talked about this like the news and just other platforms in your community. So I thank you for your leadership. And Madam Clerk, please add me as a co-sponsor. Well, if can I make a motion we embank it?
Can we embank in committee? Sure. Let's do that. There's a
You
motion
do it all
to
the time in
embank.
public safety.
Second.
Good.
Second.
Any objection? All in favor saying aye?
Aye.
All right. That's great, because I wanted to co-sponsor as well.
I had a feeling that's
I do need to make a motion to make an amendment from the floor, and I've never done this before, so give me a break if I do this wrong. But in the final line, where it says, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen that the board hereby adopt the following Vision Zero goals as attached. I am making a motion to amend it to eliminate the words as attached after the words following Vision Zero goals.
Right, I think, so there's two ways to do Vision Zero, if you don't, sorry, I just started talking. Thank you. So Vision Zero resolutions are one part of the process, and then there's also a set of goals and even further policy that can be adopted. And this is a complete oversight on my part, wanting that now therefore be resolved, just basically to acknowledge the adoption of these as our, the framework for our decisions. And that final whereas clause should really refer back to the what is in the resolution and not have an attached page. So if it makes more sense to take this hold now and actually have a final clause ready to go that is well kind of written, I'm happy that we have one more meeting on this, and that way if anyone else wants to give any testimony on it, they can in the future, just because I do not want to have a messy resolution that goes out to the full board, and that's on me for having an error.
Understandable. Yeah, why don't we just hold this then until next meeting, and we can make the edits and
amendment back.
So I'll retract my motion to make an amendment, and I don't believe anyone seconded, so we're fine there. So we will proceed with the rest of the meeting. If you have any more final thoughts, Alderwoman Schweitzer.
You can only have one final thought.
I only have one more final thought, and that's thank you so much. We've done a lot of things in our committee that I think are really promising. We've been reviewing the resolution that we passed at the beginning of session to continue to acknowledge the work the work that we're trying to do here. We've been talking about all of these things that our committee wants to do, which includes making our roads safer and improving our infrastructure, and the willingness to go through this legislation and be really committed to these ideas. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the time you've taken here on this Wednesday as one of our longest public infrastructure and utilities committee hearings. And with that, I close, and we'll make sure this resolution is ready for a vote on March 25th.
All right, thank you. And I return the chair back to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Browning, for running that meeting so smoothly. I very much appreciate it. We will move on to committee discussions. I see none. Acknowledgement of any written testimony. We acknowledged some of it, but any more that we should acknowledge, Madam Clerk?
We have 6 emails in support of Board Bill 217.
Anything for Resolution 200?
Nothing for Resolution 200.
Okay, I want to acknowledge that I did receive written testimony in support of Resolution 200, and I'll make sure the clerk receives it for the next meeting. Any announcements?
Homer's old.
No, young at heart. So excuse members, we are all present today. A+, well done team. And with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Moved by the Alderman from the 11th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th.
There you go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
We'll talk about it later.